I usually talk about fish, and I've been a fisherman for all my life, and people tell me that I ought to be the storyteller. So I always tell stories, but we're not going to tell stories. We're going to talk about cripples like me, you know. And cripples is not a good word, but I told Barbara I always come into a place and I don't want to be wearing a chest belt because it looks like I'm injured as a quad, and I don't want to look like a quad, you know. But it's like I'm here because I'm a quad. So what the heck, you know? Anyway.
I moved that closer to you.
My wife and I started across the bay from here in China Poot about 1976, and we were married over there in '78, and we started helping my brother and his family build their lodge over there, and then I got into commercial fishing, and that was where the money was, and we were living in a little dry crack cabin over there for the first 10 years, and solar panels and no running water and the whole works, like all of you have done around Alaska. And I've often given talks at the Wildlife Center for birding and the Aleutians, and for my church, and benefits for cancer people, and all kinds of stuff like that, telling about my life as a fisherman, which we're not going to do tonight. But just give you a little history about Barbara and I doing that. I fished for about 35 years, and we had a 100-foot freezer longliner that we signed our names on for $1 million when we were 30 years old, and went off and thinking we were going to pay for it, and it was like, oh my God. But the owners supported us, and we didn't have to have any down payment money because we didn't have any money. But they believed in us, and we did it. So from there, that turned out to be very lucrative. And then as we went along through the years, we were 280 days at sea almost, with 10-man crew, and in the Aleutians from Kachemak all the way to Nome and all over the Bering Sea. And Barbara and I decided we were going to start thinking about slowing down, retiring, sold a big boat, got a smaller boat, and thought we'd just slow down in Homer and be around because I was gone a lot. And we did that, and then went on vacation and rolled the car over and broke my neck, and bam, that was world upside down. Where do you go now? 11 years ago now, and I'm still trying to figure out how to live in a wheelchair. And I spent 3 years in LA, swearing to everybody I was gonna walk again. And went through I was a guinea pig for a big rehab center at UCLA. And after 3 years, I came home and had to wrap my ears around, my mind around, I'm gonna live in a wheelchair the rest of my life. I had my place across the bay, and whenever I got off the boat, bam, that's the first place I went. Stayed there until I had to go back fishing again, and we rotated with another crew, and that was my whole life. And we ended up building a beautiful retirement home over there that we just love to death, but I don't get there anymore because quadraplegia can cause a whole lot of backups. And I developed a pressure sore, which was on a wild goose chase with some buddies. As soon as I got back to Alaska after a couple years, they said, let's go back behind Homer and call some moose during the rut season. So I jump in the truck with a bunch of my buddies at 4 a.m. and they just picked me up and throw me in the truck. And 7 hours later, I had a class 4 pressure sore, and the nurses looked at my butt and said, we can see the bone. So it happened that fast. And I still have that same pressure sore right now I'm dealing with 3 years later. I've been to Anchorage and in the hospital and IVs and all the medications, and they're just very dangerous. It killed Christopher Reeve, and Christopher Reeve, some of the statistics say that the average guy that gets injured is usually a male, age 38, and in a matter of about 4 or 5 years, his wife has to leave because he's the breadwinner, he's the father, they've got kids, they got no income, and they just can't make it. It's just too difficult, and it's not like a wife is a bad wife. It's like, how's she gonna make it with no income and kids and sex life, everything gone, turned upside down and backwards, you know, and it's very, very hard thing. So some people are injured at all kinds of different levels, and you know, like Pat, he's struggling with his vision, and some people are quadriplegic, some people are paraplegic, and paraplegic can usually use their hands. So my injury is right behind my Adam's apple, so I don't feel anything below my armpits. My hands could be in boiling water, I wouldn't know it. And the same as Maggie, she even has a higher level. And most people that have her level, they're on a ventilator for the rest of their life. You can't even breathe above C3. And that kind of controls your fingers and your hands, and then it goes on down your spine. And then the lower it is in your spine, whether it's your thoracic spine or your lumbars, then they might be paraplegics, but they can't feel their butt. So if, you know, while you're sitting there now, you're all gonna jiggle around a little bit while you're sitting there and not even know it. But when you can't feel something, the pressure of the bone just pushes right through your butt till it'll actually come out of the skin, and it kills more quadriplegics than anything. They're very dangerous. So you all the time have to be dealing with it, worried about it tilting back. But I'm lucky. I'm one that, I said, if you cut me right in half, right here at my armpits, I couldn't feel any of that. And so all the pain and my low back pain that I used to have from pulling on stuff too hard, that's all gone, because I don't feel it anymore. You know, and I don't mind that. But it's like I look at people that have a prosthetic, or all military guys now that I see. It's great that the military has finally come around to help all these guys that got blown up or whatever. And I look and I go, there's one guy's got 2 prosthetics and he's running. I'm going, man, what would I give to have that? Yeah. You know, I'd cut both my legs off if I could run right now, or I'd cut both my arms off if I could just have my hands back. You know, and I've been through all that research, and I was, you know, on the list in Switzerland and places to try to go to, you know, to get fixed, but I realized that all the king's horses and men can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. So here I am doing this, and it's like Pat and I were saying. I was saying, well, Pat, I said, you know what? If I give you one eye and you give me one arm, man, we'd be a moving machine.
Let's do it.
You know. And I'm riding in the car with a buddy of mine the other day, and he's a brain injury guy, because a lot of quads, they have brain injuries as well, because they, you know, we're in a car crash or something really serious. And if you got a brain injury and you're a quad, man, life is really, really tough, really tough. And so this guy, he has brain injury, and he comes over once in a while and picks me up in my van, and we go driving. Well, he can't feel the whole right side of his leg and his arm, or his injury is right down the center of his body vertically. Wow. And he's driving my van, you know, and he's got one hand and one foot. He's got to do the brake and everything else, and I'm over there riding with him. And all of a sudden he starts having low blood sugar, and he says, "Man, I gotta have something to eat. I gotta have something to eat." And I'm going, well, hell, I can't help you, you know. And so he pulls into McDonald's, and he grabs, you know, tells him a burger, and the lady's not understanding, and he's getting edgy, you know, and he wants to have that burger. And then he pulls over there. I said, boy, we're a fine pair. I said, like 2 men in an ass kicking contest, and we can't even do that, you know. But anyway, it's the way the life goes, and you gotta kind of deal with it. So. I guess the other things I ought to tell you about is living across the bay there. I wanted to get back across the bay immediately once I got injured, and I'm sorry to say, but I might only get over there 5 times a summer anymore. And we've got a beautiful, beautiful place there, and so now we tried to turn it into a VRBO. So we're going to start doing that, and we're going to start trying to do it for disabled people, because I have a tram that goes down in the water that'll lift me up onto the front lawn, and I can go right into the house, and it's all set up with ramps and a Hoyer lift and the whole thing. The only thing we haven't done is made the showers and stuff accessible. And it's got a great old-fashioned sauna out in the front, made out of a pilot house right over the dock on the water. And it's got a guest house. And Barb and I lived in the guest house for the years when we were building it. It's pretty much a 5-star home, all solar paneled and ready to roll, walk in, turn the key. So we're in the process of making that happen. And by next year, we're gonna be full-blown, being able to take wheelchair people to wherever they want to go. And I then had a 24-foot aluminum skiff with a cabin on it, and the guy and I that built it cut the side out of it, made a ramp so I could go right down to the harbor where the Salty Dog is, pull right down the ramp, we'd lift the side out. I drive right in, go back into the back of the cabin and start her up. I can't drive because I can't feel my hands. If I could just feel my hands, I could hold the wheel and drive. But anyway, then that takes us over, and we pull right up to the tram, and they knock the side out again. I roll right up on the tram, and it goes right up 40 feet up the cliff, and we're right in the front yard. And so we're thinking that might be something that will be accessible for a lot of people that can't get around. And the only thing I think there is in the harbor right now is a landing craft. And I've done that one time going in the landing craft, but it's out in the front, and it's wind, and it's cold, you can't get inside, and it's raining, it's not any fun. Now the one I have, I drive the wheelchair right inside the cab and close the doors up, and we can turn the heat on if we want. Yeah. But we could do it with 2 wheelchairs, but that's all we could do. But I mean, any people in wheelchairs, we could, you know, I've got a guy that's getting his water taxi license, and he'll be able to take anybody to Halibut Cove or over to the glacier or wherever you wanted to go. So that's what we're kind of aiming towards with that. Mako, who owns a water taxi, he's going to take me over when he finds out that I want to go on the water taxi, which I've never been on a water taxi in my entire life in Homer, because I always had my own boat, and we always went back and forth. And I'm thinking, I'm going on this water taxi, you know. So we have a little trouble getting in, and I also have a chair over there that has tracks on it, so I can get around and go on the beach. And so I got the track chair and me in the front, and Mako's got the front door of his boat open. Why? I mean, I thought that was a little odd, but he wanted to talk to me while we were driving. So we're idling out of the harbor here, and as we get part of the way out of the harbor, all of a sudden we had a canvas, not a canvas, but like a car tarp that has elastic around it that you would put over your car, and the bottom of it has elastic in it. Well, they just threw that over my back and threw that over my other wheelchair that was right next to me, and I'm looking right at Mako with my back turned so the waves wouldn't splash on me and that sort of thing. And he starts to go, and all of a sudden my other chair that they had put in there for me hadn't been turned off. Mm-hmm. And the wind blows the tarp over on the lever right here. Oh, no. And the track chair goes running into the cabin. And Mako jumps out there to try to get it, and the track chair pins him up against the bulkhead with the tracks running. And the tracks are running, and I'm looking at Mako, and I'm going, hell, I can't help you, man. And the next thing you know, he's looking down there, and he's going on me, and he pulls his tennis shoe right off his foot. And he's got his foot, and he gets his tennis shoe out, and I finally tell him how to turn it off. And we're laughing at each other, and I'm going, here you and I are, God, how many years at sea, and we don't have these things tied down right. And I got the buttons all messed up, and oh boy, it was quite the hoot. In Homer here, everybody that builds a wheelchair ramp or is an owner of a local business, the wheelchair ramps are great. And first thing you do when you're in a chair like me, these are power chairs, which you see 3 of them here. They're quite a lot different than somebody that's pushing somebody in a small wheelchair that would say be a paraplegic, or a paraplegic can use the wheels and push their wheelchairs to get around. But when you all of a sudden come up to a 2x4 ramp, and the 2x4 is sticking up there, to push that thing over the 2x4 is more than you can do. And with me or these guys, you know, we sometimes turn the power up and bam, you got to hit it, And I went into one doctor's office that I complained to him 2 or 3 times about it, that there was this cement edge at the doorway. And so I had to back up from the doorway, turn the power up, and ram through there, and bam, here I come entering into the waiting room with 8 people, and they're all looking at me like, what the hell is going on? You know? Or I went out to a place to eat the other night, and it was the same thing. It was a 2x4 there, and I thought, oh, well, I can get over this. And I got over it, and my feet ran right into the glass window. Luckily, didn't break it, but everybody in the restaurant turned around looking like, who is this coming in? So I'm thinking that I'm gonna work maybe with Michael, he doesn't know it yet, or my good friend Dave Brand back over there, who's master of trails. And I'm gonna call the group the Musketeer Vigilantes. And I got a way that we can fix all of them with a 2x12 and a couple hinges. Because the problem is, for all these local people here, we're living in the land of gravel, and there's not much asphalt. Now, Land's End is great, and I always come down here to eat because they got a great asphalt ramp that goes right up and there's no bump. But when you get to all these other places, 90% of them, they built the ramps and they hired a carpenter to build them, but the carpenter didn't figure out that the gravel's gonna move and everything's gonna change when people are walking in there, and there's gonna be the big bump that you can't get over. So I think what I'm gonna just do is get some guys together, and we're gonna go buy some 2x12s and some hinges, and we'll go put them in them ourselves for them. And that'll take care of that, and maybe we'll get sued for not being certified by the ADA or whatever, but it'll get done one way or the other. So that's kind of the thing that I'm, that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. And, you know, all the stuff that the Independent's done for all these guys here and people in town that want to try to get down to the fishing hole, and the matting and all the things that got to be figured out. And Dave's all the time talking to me about how we're going to get people up to the Halibut Cove and change 4 or 5 different levels. And it's like we can't. I mean, it's a lot of engineering and a lot of figuring out to do, and the ground freezes and things heave, and it's just not easy. And like me, not too long ago, I flipped this chair up backwards in my own driveway, right over on, but I was belted in, and I was right on my headrest, but and my grandson was with me, and I was like 40 degrees upside down, and he's going, oh Bubba, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna call? And he went and called, and I said, well, call my neighbors. So I called 3 of my neighbors, and all of my neighbors are like 75 years old. And I'm turned upside down, and they're all coming over to going, how can we help? How can we help? And I says, well, you guys are gonna have to lift me straight up in my chair. And the chair is 400 pounds. And it's like, we can't do anything. And then I called a couple fishermen, and they dropped what they were doing down in the harbor and came up, and the emergency squad came and lifted me back up, and I wasn't hurt in the slightest. But it's amazing how careful you have to be of what you run into and what you have to deal with. And other than that, I don't really have any regrets about being injured. I figure our faith is taking care of us, and we'll just do what we have to do to get where we want to go. But I stay real busy every day, and the only other thing that you might know about is my wife and I were lucky enough up till when I was 55, when I was injured, we were pretty successful in our fishing business. So we had built up some money for retirement. And since then, you can't have any money and be on Medicaid. They just won't give you any money. So all of our caregiving and all of that comes straight out of pocket, which we've just been depleting our retirement money till we're getting real close to having to do something pretty drastic, which is like get a divorce and turn everything over to your wife, and me have nothing, to be able to get Medicaid to pay for it, because I only have a caregiver for 4 hours a day, and then my wife's on call for the whole rest of the time, and I tell her all the time, I say, your angel wings are getting dirty on the ends because they're growing so long, they're dragging on the floor. But it's just amazing how much money it takes to do what we do. And then if you have to pay for a caregiver out of pocket, it gets expensive real fast. And you know, people like us need 24-hour care. I mean, I'm waking her up in the middle of the night all the time and telling her I'm too hot and need the blankets off me, or I'm too cold and need the blankets on me, or any numerous things. But anyway, thank God for my wife.
Come see us before you get a divorce.
Yes.
There are options.
Yeah, well, good, good.
And I'd like to say a couple of things. One thing is, you never give up hope. I mean, there's always hope, and there's usually always a way. It might be a different way. Your life's definitely different than it used to be. But you still go on, and you still can have a good life. And I remember when we were at the Shepherd Center, when Pat had finished his rehab, we were getting ready to come home. And we were there for quite a while. And they make you stay in an apartment that they furnish for you, and you learn everything. The caregiver has to learn everything. And by the way, a caregiving job is not easy. But it's worth it if the person is worth it. And he's definitely worth it to me. But when they said, well, now that your rehab is done, what are you guys gonna be doing? And we said, well, we're going home. And they knew we were from Alaska. And they said, you're going home? Well, how are you gonna do that? How are you gonna go living back in Alaska where you have no resources or anything? I said, well, it's our home, and that's where we're going. So we took off and we came back to Alaska, and ever since then, you know, we just made it work. So where there's a will, there's always a way. You might have to, you know, think about it and have other people give you ideas. And Pat's an idea man, so you get problems that come up and you just figure them out. And just like across the bay, retrofitting the boat to get him over there, because, you know, outdoors is where we all want to be. That's why we're in Alaska. We love Alaska. So what the Independent Living Center is trying to do is make that still happen for all of us. And I have to applaud that part of the Living Center. That's just great. So anyway, we've had a good life. It's different now, and we just keep going, and it'll continue to be good, but in a different way. So I hope you can all get outdoors, no matter if you have a disability or not, and enjoy this beautiful place that we live in.
Amen.